Choose your casting patterns wisely as you compete to surround your enemies in the fields of the gods in Mitropia. Hey gang, and thanks for joining us today at Teach from House Studio 3. I'm Will Meadows.
And I'm Sarah Meadows, and today we're previewing the game Mitropia from Time Warp Labs.
It's a 2 to 5 player area control game that's coming to Kickstarter soon. Time Warp Labs sent us a copy of the game to check out, so let's take a look at how it's played.
To set up the game, configure the hex tiles for your player count, adding in the special tiles like mountains, wormholes, and strategic tiles.
Then give each player their board and markers, and in turn order, players will place their chieftain on any allowable spot on the board.
3 action cards and 2 movement pattern cards are dealt to each player.
Players will select 1 movement card to place on their board, and then you're ready to begin.
On their turn, players will place a warrior on the board by using a movement card. The card is oriented in the way their army is facing, and then an already deployed warrior is chosen to move off from. So in this example, the new warrior may be placed in one of these 3 spaces in conjunction with this selected warrior on the board.
A player may instead choose to play an action card from their hand to do things like charge 4 spaces away from their warrior, ambush and go anywhere on the board, or place an additional warrior.
Warriors have liberties, or spaces around them, and if opponents can completely surround or remove all the liberties, the warriors are captured and divvied up for endgame points.
Play continues around the board until a chieftain is captured, or if there are no possible moves remaining. Points are then tallied, and the player with the most points wins. In Mitropia, players act as warring gods who are striving to prove their dominance and will over one another. They're doing it strategically in the field of the gods, and they'll be doing it by placing warriors that they've conjured from their nice little felt bag, and placing it out on the board, trying to capture one another and gain area control. They'll do that primarily by using a hand of cards that they've been dealt.
Yes, and the players will start with a card out on their board. They can use that movement card to place out a next warrior, or they can even use the top card in the discard pile as well. They have a hand of cards. Some of those might be action cards and some will be the movement cards, so you can always play a card out of your hand. And then you'll need to make sure that you orient the card the correct direction that your army is moving. So if it's facing a certain direction, you'll play it that way, and then make sure that the token that you move off of that warrior, you are allowed to go in the space that you'd like to.
Players can also draw from a special card of action deck cards that allow you to move around the board as well. Those give you the ability to do all kinds of different things. Sometimes you're jumping several spaces or traveling in a unique direction. Sometimes you're able to place 2 or take 2 turns in a row. One of the most powerful cards in the game is the deflect card, which actually allows you to stop what someone else is doing, or if they try to stop you, you can re-stop them. Those cards really give you some interesting choices in the game.
Yeah, and the game kind of reminds me of Go, where you're trying to surround the other players, but you can't just go wherever you want. You have to follow those movement cards, so it adds a nice twist to that mechanic that a lot of people know. And when you surround another warrior or group of warriors, you have to completely surround every single space before they can be overtaken. And so that's where the battle comes in on the board, is to, as you're taking over each other, and if you play with more than 2 players, 3, 4, and 5 players, it becomes very difficult to start surrounding other players.
Yeah, and you do have some interesting terrain tiles as well, which will change every time you play it, and so surrounding an opponent may only mean placing 2 or 3 pieces if you can use the edge of the board and a mountain and another player's pawn. So it gets really tight really quick in some of those games. As you play with a larger player count, you obviously add more tiles to the board, and you have a larger play space to do it in, but then it can get pretty cutthroat and mean as the dude who's in the middle ends up getting surrounded from both sides, and he takes a turn, and before he even has a chance to try again, he's now completely surrounded by 3 other players who have locked him out of a point.
Yeah, each of the player boards has a unique ability for that player. And so it has kind of two different things that that player can do in addition to the normal action. So it might allow a player to have an extra card in their hand during the game, or be able to have a little bit more of a defense. Those all have each player has a different type of focus in the game, whether it's offensive or defensive. And so changing out those players from game to game can shake things up a little bit.
Now, obviously, as we mentioned, we're looking at a prototype copy of the game. I believe the final version, the decks of cards will have different backs, and some of the card art and pieces might change as well. But overall, the gameplay that you're seeing is going to be the experience that you get. If you're interested in Mitropia, be sure to check out their Kickstarter campaign, see what their stretch goals are, see what they're going to be adding to the game. If it sounds like something you would enjoy and you like that area control, player versus lots of players type of play, then definitely check it out. And then, as always, thanks so much for liking, subscribing, and following along here at Tantrum House. People will be placing a token each time they take a turn. Elongated every word in that sentence.
Placement can go for using one of those cards on where you will go that turn. That was really wordy.
I think the word you were looking for was orientation.
Yes. Yes, it was.